The Navy ship that disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle nearly 100 years ago is now the focus of a new book.
On March 4th, 1918, the USS Cyclops, a titan of the U.S. Navy, sent its last routine message. Then, absolute silence. For 107 years, the ship's disappearance with 306 souls aboard has remained one of America's greatest maritime mysteries. Now, that mystery is finally solved. But the truth of what brought down this massive vessel is far more terrifying than any Bermuda Triangle legend. The Navy now understands what sank her, and the answer is a chilling warning about a hidden danger that could lurk within any ship at any time, waiting to strike without a sound. The ship that disappeared. The story of the USS Cyclops begins not with her end, but with her impressive birth. Launched in May of 1910, she was a marvel of naval engineering. At 540 feet long and 65 feet wide, this was no ordinary ship. She was a Proteus-class collier, a steel giant designed for one crucial purpose: to haul massive quantities of coal to fuel the Navy's warships across the globe. She could carry up to 12,500 tons of coal and displace nearly 20,000 tons when fully loaded. The name Cyclops was chosen for the mythical one-eyed giants of legend, a fitting title for a vessel of such immense size and strength. For years, she served her role flawlessly, a workhorse of the Atlantic Fleet, ensuring American power could reach the farthest corners of the ocean. But in April 1917, everything changed. As the United States plunged into the First World War, the Cyclops was officially commissioned into the U.S. Naval Reserve Force. Her mission shifted from simple transport to critical wartime logistics. In January 1918, she was tasked with a strategically vital run: deliver nearly 10,000 tons of coal to the South American Patrol Squadron in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and return with a full load of manganese ore. You see, manganese was the secret ingredient for producing the hardened steel needed for armor plating and munitions. Without it, the war effort could grind to a halt. This wasn't just another voyage, it was essential to victory. On January 9, 1918, the Cyclops steamed out of Norfolk, Virginia. After a long but uneventful 3-week journey, she arrived safely in Rio on January 28th. For 2 weeks, her crew worked to offload the coal and take on her new precious cargo: a staggering 11,000 tons of manganese ore. On February 15th, with 306 people aboard, a mix of crew and passengers, she began her journey home with a planned stop in Bahia, Brazil. On February 22nd, she departed Bahia for the final leg of her trip, destined for Baltimore, Maryland. She was expected to arrive on March 13th, but the Cyclops would never see an American port again. Somewhere in the vast empty expanse of the Atlantic, she made an unscheduled and still unexplained stop in Bridgetown, Barbados on March 3rd. This would be the last time anyone ever saw the ship. After leaving Barbados on March 4th, the USS Cyclops sailed into oblivion. There was no distress call, no warning from her wireless operator, no flares spotted in the night. She just vanished. The ship was gone. As days turned into weeks, confusion at the Navy Department morphed into alarm and then into sheer disbelief. How could a vessel of that magnitude, a cornerstone of the transport fleet, disappear from the face of the earth without a single trace? It was as if a 54-story building had been plucked from a city skyline overnight. The silence from the Cyclops was not just an absence of communication, it was a deafening roar of mystery that would echo for more than a century, becoming the single greatest loss of life in U.S. naval history outside of direct combat. The ship didn't just sink, it was erased from existence. An ocean of theories. When the USS Cyclops failed to arrive in Baltimore on March 13, 1918, the U.S. Navy unleashed one of the most extensive search operations it had ever conducted. The search area was immense, stretching from the Virginia Capes down the eastern seaboard and across the vast Caribbean Sea. Ships crisscrossed the Cyclops' intended route, their crews scanning the endless waves for any sign of the lost vessel. They looked for floating wreckage, an oil slick, or even a single life preserver. From the air, patrol planes flew grueling patterns over the ocean, their pilots hoping to spot something the ships below might have missed. The Navy alerted every coastal station, every lighthouse, and every merchant ship in the region to be on the lookout. The message was simple: find anything. Day after day, the search parties returned with the same grim report: no wreckage, no debris, no bodies. The complete lack of evidence was what made the situation so unnerving. A ship of that size couldn't just sink without leaving some kind of footprint, but the Atlantic had swallowed the Cyclops whole. The official Navy report captured the feeling of utter helplessness, stating its disappearance was one of the most baffling mysteries in the annals of the Navy. With no evidence to go on, speculation ran wild. The most obvious theory, given the ongoing World War, was that a German U-boat had ambushed and sunk the Cyclops. German submarines were known to be prowling the Atlantic shipping lanes. However, after the war ended, German naval records were seized and meticulously examined. The truth was startling. There were no German submarines operating anywhere near the Cyclops' route during the time she disappeared. The enemy action theory was a dead end. Another plausible explanation was the weather. The Atlantic in March can be notoriously violent. Many believe the ship sailed straight into a powerful, unforecasted storm. A massive rogue wave, a wall of water that can reach over 100 feet high, could have struck the ship, rolling it over and sending it to the bottom in minutes. What many overlooked is that the Cyclops was heavily laden with manganese ore, making her sit lower in the water and potentially less stable in rough seas. Other theories pointed inward, suggesting sabotage from a spy on board or even a mutiny among a disgruntled crew. Yet no evidence ever surfaced to support these claims. The mystery only deepened, and with the absence of facts, myth began to take hold. The ship became a ghost story, a legend of the sea whispered by sailors for generations. A warning from a survivor. Decades after the Cyclops vanished, a critical piece of the puzzle emerged from an unlikely source. In 1969, a former officer who had served on the ship, Lieutenant Conrad Nervig, published a chilling first-hand account of his time aboard. Nervig was meant to be on that final voyage, but was reassigned in Rio de Janeiro just before the ship departed for home. His story painted a disturbing picture of a vessel plagued by dysfunction, all stemming from one man, her commanding officer, Lieutenant Commander George W. Worley. According to Nervig, Worley was, to put it lightly, not fit for command. He described his former captain as a gruff, eccentric salt of the old school who ruled with an iron fist but lacked the basic skills of a competent seaman. Nervig called him an indifferent navigator who was overly cautious and deeply disliked by his crew. The thing nobody tells you about a ship is that morale is just as important as the hull's integrity. On the Cyclops, morale was at rock bottom. Nervig wrote that the crew was thoroughly demoralized and disorganized, living under a cloud of mistrust and fear. There was no sense of unity, only quiet resentment for the cold and erratic captain. Nervig recalled a tragic incident that highlighted the ship's dysfunctional environment. During an engine operation, one of the massive propellers was engaged while a small boat was too close. The powerful suction pulled the boat in, and a sailor was thrown overboard and lost to the waves. The event shattered the crew's already fragile confidence. But it was one of Worley's final decisions that Nervig believed sealed the ship's fate. The executive officer, the second in command, was the only man on board with extensive experience in loading and securing manganese ore. Following a trivial disagreement with Worley, this crucial officer was confined to his quarters, stripped of his duties. This left the complex and dangerous task of loading 11,000 tons of manganese to junior officers who had never handled such a cargo. You see, manganese ore is incredibly dense, significantly denser than the coal the ship was designed to carry. Nervig suspected that without expert supervision, the crew simply dumped the entire load into the ship's center holds. This would have created a dangerous pendulum effect, putting immense, concentrated stress on the ship's keel and midsection. If the load shifted in heavy seas, or if the ship was caught between two large waves, the hull could snap like a twig. This wasn't just a mistake, it was a catastrophic failure of leadership. Anatomy of a disaster. For 107 years, the fate of the USS Cyclops was a mystery locked in the depths of the ocean. But in early 2025, a team of maritime forensic experts decided to tackle the cold case with technology the original investigators could only dream of. They didn't rely on old theories. They used cutting-edge naval architecture software, advanced weather modeling, and a deep dive into historical archives to digitally reconstruct the ship's final moments. What they uncovered wasn't just a theory, it was a terrifyingly precise explanation for what happened. First, the team recreated the weather conditions for March 1918. By combining historical barometric logs with modern satellite-derived oceanographic data, they confirmed that the Cyclops had sailed directly into a powerful storm system just northeast of Barbados. The waves were likely in the range of 30 to 40 feet, a violent sea, but one a ship of that size should have been able to handle. But here's the kicker: the Cyclops wasn't a healthy ship. The investigators unearthed old maintenance logs and dry dock inspection reports that had been overlooked for decades. These documents revealed a disturbing history of structural problems. There was evidence of severe corrosion along the hull, and most critically, shipyard notes mentioned metal fatigue around the keel supports right in the midship section. The team then created a perfect digital twin of the Cyclops using her original blueprints. They loaded this virtual ship with 11,000 tons of manganese ore, placing it exactly where Conrad Nervig suspected, concentrated in the center holds. Then they subjected the model to the simulated storm conditions. As the virtual ship was lifted at its bow and stern by two massive waves, leaving the midsection momentarily suspended in the trough, the immense focused weight of the manganese ore exerted a force the weakened keel could not withstand. The simulation showed a catastrophic structural failure. The ship didn't just crack, it snapped in half. The forensic analysis showed the collapse happened in a matter of seconds. The two massive sections of the ship would have flooded instantly as the tons of ore poured into the breach, dragging both halves underwater. The entire event, from the initial fracture to the ship being completely submerged, would have taken less than 90 seconds. There would have been no time to deploy lifeboats. No time for the crew to even comprehend what was happening. The lead expert on the team called the finding terrifying, stating the crew likely perished in total darkness, without a single call for help. It was a brutal combination of a weakened ship, a dangerous cargo loaded improperly, and a fatal lack of leadership. The truth was a silent, instantaneous, and utterly final catastrophe. Why the Cyclops still haunt us? The resolution of the USS Cyclops mystery after 107 years doesn't diminish its haunting power. In fact, the scientific explanation is perhaps more chilling than any of the supernatural legends it replaced. There was no monster, no vortex, no enemy action. The end came from within, a result of human error and the unforgiving laws of physics. This single event remains the largest non-combat loss of life in the history of the United States Navy. Over 300 souls were lost and not one was ever recovered. What makes the story so enduring is the sheer totality of the disappearance. In an age of satellites and sonar, the idea that a 540-foot naval vessel could be completely erased from the ocean is a humbling and terrifying thought. It serves as a stark reminder that for all our technology, the sea remains a powerful and unpredictable force. The legacy of the Cyclops is a cautionary tale that resonates within the Navy to this day. It's a story about how small, overlooked details, corrosion on a keel, an arrogant captain, and improperly loaded cargo can cascade into a disaster of unimaginable scale. The ship's name is now synonymous with more than just a mystery. It represents the hidden dangers that lie beneath the surface, both in the deep ocean and in the chain of command. The warnings were there in Nervig's account and in the dusty maintenance logs, but they went unheeded. The crew wasn't lost to a storm, they were lost to a series of bad decisions that made the storm fatal. The science seems to have solved it, but is it possible a piece of this 100-year-old puzzle is still missing? Let us know your thoughts below. Like and subscribe for more stories from the deep.